On our mating night, my alpha humiliated me before the pack. He didn't expect who I'd become. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Alice stood nervously at the center of the pack gathering, her heart pounding against her chest. This was supposed to be a night of celebration, a night where she would finally be accepted as the mate of Dorian, the alpha of the pack. But instead, it felt more like a trial. Her eyes scanned the crowd of wolves, their eyes filled with judgment and barely concealed disdain. The whispers were enough to make her feel small, insignificant. She had always known that being an Omega meant she would never be fully accepted, but she never imagined it would hurt this much. Dorian, her supposed mate, stood beside her, his posture stiff and regal. He was everything she was not, strong, powerful, and admired by everyone. But tonight, there was no warmth in his eyes when they met hers. Instead, there was only cold indifference. The pack had gathered to watch them bond, to witness their union. But what Alice hadn't expected was the cruelty that would be unleashed that night. "She's not worthy of you, Dorian." A voice rang out from the crowd, followed by a chorus of laughter. Alice's stomach churned, but she remained silent, her gaze fixed on the ground. She had been humiliated in front of the pack before, but this was different. This was public, and it felt like it was the final blow. Dorian didn't say anything. He didn't defend her. Instead, he stood there, motionless, as the insults continued to fly. She was nothing but a weak, broken Omega, barely worthy of his attention. Her heart shattered, and for a moment, she considered running away. But where could she go? Her life had always been tied to this pack, to him. "I reject you as my mate, Alice." Dorian's voice cut through the laughter, cold and final. "You're not what I need." The words stung like a blade to the chest. Alice wanted to scream, to run, to escape the suffocating weight of the pack's judgment. But she didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she stood there, frozen, her heart crumbling with every passing second. The humiliation was unbearable. But little did she know, this night would not end as she feared. Something deep within her began to stir, something powerful, something that had always been there, but was now awakening. The moonlight above seemed to intensify, bathing her in a soft glow. And with it, a strange warmth spread through her body, radiating from her heart. Her skin tingled, and she could feel a surge of energy rising within her. Without thinking, she raised her head, her eyes locking onto Dorian's. For the first time, she saw something shift in his expression, surprise, confusion, and a flicker of something else. "What is this?" Dorian whispered, stepping back as if unsure of what he was seeing. Alice could feel the power in her veins, a newfound strength coursing through her, and with it, a sense of clarity she had never known. She was no longer the weak Omega she had once been. She was something more. And Dorian didn't expect it. The pack didn't expect it. And Alice, for the first time in her life, didn't care. She wasn't going to shrink back anymore. She wasn't going to let them define her. The humiliation she had suffered only fueled her resolve. She was ready to show them who she truly was. As the moonlight shimmered down upon the gathering, Alice stood tall despite the harsh whispers of the pack echoing around her. The air was thick with judgment, but something had shifted within her. She was no longer the meek Omega who was afraid of being seen. The power within her, raw and untamed, surged to the surface like a tidal wave. She could feel her heart pounding, but now, it was no longer in fear. It was in strength. Dorian's eyes, which had been filled with indifference moments ago, now betrayed a hint of surprise. His usual composure faltered as he stared at her, not with the disdain he once had, but with confusion. "What are you doing?" Dorian whispered, his voice barely audible over the tense silence that fell upon the crowd. Alice didn't answer him. She didn't need to. She knew what she was doing. For the first time, she was standing up for herself. For the first time, she felt powerful, not because of anyone else's approval, but because of her own strength. The whispers among the pack grew louder, but they weren't mocking her anymore. There was uncertainty now, fear. And then, she spoke. Her voice, once soft and hesitant, now rang out clear and strong, carrying across the silence. I will no longer be what you expect me to be. The words were like a declaration, an oath to herself. The power within her thrummed in response, like the pulse of the earth beneath her feet. The pack fell silent, and even Dorian seemed to hold his breath as he watched her. She wasn't the broken Omega they had all dismissed. She wasn't the weak wolf who could be trampled on. No, Alice had finally realized her worth, and nothing, not even Dorian's cold gaze, could take that away from her. The moon, the symbol of destiny, seemed to glow brighter above her, as if in recognition of the transformation she was undergoing. She felt the shift in the air, the magic that had always been there, dormant, now awakening within her. She wasn't just any Omega. She was more. And tonight, they would all see it. You humiliated me, Alice continued, her voice steady but filled with a fire that matched the fury in her chest. You tried to break me, but you didn't. You only made me stronger. And now, you will see who I really am. Dorian stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He had expected her to crumble. He had expected her to run away in shame, to beg for his forgiveness. But instead, she stood her ground, unwavering, a force to be reckoned with. The Alpha King, who had once been her mate, now found himself uncertain, caught off guard by the strength she was radiating. The pack, too, had fallen into a stunned silence. They had underestimated her, but now, they couldn't look away. Alice could feel their eyes on her, and for the first time, she felt no shame, only power. She stepped forward, walking past Dorian as though he no longer mattered. The moment she moved, the pack parted, almost as if they were afraid of her. Alice didn't care. She wasn't there for them. She wasn't there for Dorian. She was there for herself. As she walked, the whispers of the pack began to rise once more, but now, there was respect in their voices, even if it was laced with awe and disbelief. Did you see that? The Omega, she's different. She's not the same one we mocked. She's powerful. Alice's steps were slow, deliberate, and each one seemed to reinforce the change within her. She was no longer the Omega they could ignore. She was the woman who had stood up to her humiliation and had turned it into something beautiful, something powerful. As she reached the edge of the clearing, she could feel Dorian's gaze burning into her back. But she didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She had already claimed her power. She had already claimed her place. For the first time, she was free, and nothing would ever be the same again. The following day, the sun rose over the pack, but it was a new dawn for Alice. The events of the previous night replayed in her mind, the humiliation, the strength, and the power that had surged through her. She had felt it deep within, like a storm building, ready to break free. And now, it was time for the pack to truly see who she was. Alice stood at the edge of the forest, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the trees met the sky. The pack's territory stretched for miles, and every inch of it felt different now. She wasn't the same Omega she had been when she arrived. She wasn't the broken, weak girl who had been tossed aside. She was strong, she was powerful, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Behind her, Dorian approached. She could feel his presence before she heard his footsteps, his powerful energy filling the air around her. She had known he would come. After last night's public display, he could no longer ignore her, and deep down, she knew he wouldn't be able to resist trying to claim her once more. Alice, his voice called softly, and though it was gentle, there was a firmness to it that made her spine straighten. She didn't turn around to face him. She didn't need to. I was wrong, Dorian continued, his tone softer than she had ever heard it before. Last night, he hesitated, and Alice finally turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. You humiliated me, she said calmly, her voice steady, but there was no anger in her words, only a quiet confidence that seemed to radiate from her. Dorian stepped closer, his usual imposing figure now appearing smaller, almost unsure. I never meant for that to happen, he said, looking down at the ground, a sign of vulnerability that Alice hadn't seen before. I thought I knew what was best for you, for both of us, but I see now that I was wrong. You are not weak, Alice. You never were. Alice looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity in them. For a moment, she wondered if this was the Dorian she had once hoped for, the one who could see her for who she truly was. But then, she remembered the humiliation, the rejection, the way he had stood by and let the pack tear her down. "You don't get to define me anymore," she said, her voice steady and firm. "I've found my strength, and I won't let anyone take that away from me, not even you." Dorian's expression shifted, and for the first time, Alice saw a flicker of admiration in his eyes. He took another step forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "Then what now, Alice?" he asked, his voice tinged with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Alice's heart beat steadily in her chest as she met his gaze, and for the first time, she didn't feel small, didn't feel insignificant. "Now, I take my place," she said, her words clear and powerful. "Not as your mate, but as the woman I was always meant to be." There was a pause as Dorian processed her words, his face unreadable. He opened his mouth to speak, but Alice raised her hand, stopping him. "I don't need your approval, Dorian," she said, her voice strong and unwavering. "I don't need anyone's approval. I've learned to stand on my own, and I will lead, with or without you." Dorian was silent for a long moment, and Alice could see the conflict in his eyes, the war between his pride as alpha and the respect he now felt for her. Finally, he nodded slowly, his voice low but sincere. "I never thought I'd see the day when you'd be the one standing tall," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "But I see it now. I see the strength in you, Alice, and I won't stand in your way." Alice nodded, the weight of his words settling within her. She had fought for this moment, for this recognition, and now it was hers. The pack had witnessed her rise, and Dorian, the Alpha King, had acknowledged her. It was the beginning of something new, something only she could define. She turned away from him, her steps sure and steady as she began to walk toward the heart of the pack's territory. The wolves, the pack, were waiting. But this time, Alice wasn't walking into the shadows. She was walking into the light, and nothing would stop her now. The pack was silent as Alice walked through their midst, her steps confident and steady, her head held high. It was the first time in her life that she felt truly seen, not as the Omega that had been discarded, but as someone with strength and power. The whispers from the pack, once filled with mockery and disdain, had turned into murmurs of respect, awe, and curiosity. They watched her with a new understanding, unsure of what she would do next, but for the first time, she could see that they were uncertain of her weakness. She was no longer invisible to them. She had earned their attention. Alice approached the heart of the pack's territory, where the Alpha's council met. Dorian, though still the leader, no longer felt like the only force in the pack. His eyes, once cold and distant, followed her every move, but there was no judgment in them now, only respect. The same respect that came from those around her. Alice knew she had crossed a line in their society, and she was ready to face whatever consequences awaited. The elders of the pack stood in a semicircle, their eyes not on Dorian, but on her, as if she were the one who mattered now. "Alice," one of the elder wolves spoke, his voice heavy with authority. "You have shown us a strength that we did not expect, a strength that cannot be ignored." She stood tall before them, her gaze unwavering. "I am not here to be tolerated," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "I am here to be respected, to be heard." The elders exchanged glances, but no one spoke. Alice continued, "I've spent my life living in the shadows of others, but not anymore. I will no longer let my fate be decided by someone else. I choose my own path." She could feel the weight of her words settle into the air around them. This was no longer just a declaration to Dorian or the pack. It was a promise to herself, to her soul, that she would take control of her life, and nothing would hold her back. "You are brave," one of the elders said, stepping forward. His gaze was one of genuine admiration. "But the path you walk is not one many choose. The pack will follow strength, and your strength is clear, but you must understand the burden of leadership." Alice nodded. "I understand that," she said, "but I am no longer afraid of the burden. I was afraid once, but not anymore." The elder nodded in approval, and the rest of the council followed suit. They had witnessed her transformation, seen the fire in her eyes, and knew that she was not someone to be underestimated. Alice turned to Dorian, who stood by silently, watching her. For the first time, he no longer appeared as a distant leader, but as a man who had come to terms with the reality of who she was. "Dorian," she said, her voice steady, "this pack will follow me, or they will follow you. But they will no longer follow the old way of thinking. The old way that said omegas are weak. That said we are meant to be pushed aside. We will no longer be treated as lesser. Dorian's eyes softened as he nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Then let's build something new. Together, he said. For a moment, Alice was taken aback. She had expected resistance, expected him to deny her, to fight her claim. But instead, he was offering her something. Respect. Partnership. She wasn't sure what this meant for them, for their relationship, but in that moment, she knew they could create something powerful together. The pack, though still uncertain, seemed to sense the shift in the air. They saw the respect between Alice and Dorian, and the strength in her eyes that now matched his. For the first time, the pack was not divided by hierarchy. They were united by strength, and Alice had proven that she had more than enough of it to lead. This is only the beginning, Alice said, her voice rising as she addressed the pack. The old ways are broken, and from now on, we will forge our own destiny. Together, the pack, for the first time in years, began to stir with a new energy. It was subtle at first, but Alice could feel it. The respect, the acknowledgement, the unity. The night of her humiliation had led to this moment. The moment where she was no longer the discarded Omega but a leader in her own right. She had found her power, and nothing, not even the Alpha, could take it from her. The pack had witnessed her rise, and now, they were ready to follow her, not because she was an Omega, but because she was strong, and that was all that mattered. Days passed, and the atmosphere in the pack began to change. Alice walked through the territory with newfound purpose, her steps more confident than ever before. The pack, though still hesitant, was starting to accept the shift in their leader. They no longer looked at her with pity or disdain, but with respect and even admiration. Her presence no longer felt like a quiet force trying to prove herself. Now, it was undeniable, and the pack knew it. Dorian remained by her side, his silent support a constant reminder that this new path was theirs to walk together. The pack's elders had begun to include her in their discussions, recognizing her strength and her keen understanding of what needed to change. Alice had become a vital part of the leadership, not just by her power, but by her ability to listen and learn from everyone around her. One afternoon, Alice stood at the border of the pack's territory, overlooking the vast expanse of land they called home. She could feel the wind against her skin, the cool breeze that brought the scent of the forest and the distant mountains. The world felt different now. She felt different. The power within her was no longer something she had to hide or be ashamed of. It was a part of her, and she embraced it fully. Alice, Dorian's voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to face him, and for the first time in weeks, she saw him without the weight of his title or the responsibilities of being Alpha pressing down on him. He was simply Dorian, and in that moment, she realized how much they had both changed. "You've done it," he said, his voice soft but filled with admiration. "You've united them. They follow you now, not because of me, but because of you." Alice smiled, but it wasn't the same smile she would have given him in the past, when she had been unsure of herself. This time, it was a smile of recognition. "We've done it, Dorian," she replied. "You didn't hold me back, and for that, I am grateful." Dorian's expression softened, and for the first time, he truly looked at her as an equal, not just as his mate, but as someone who stood beside him in the leadership of the pack. "I see now," he said quietly, "that I've been blind. I thought I had to control everything, but I was wrong. You've shown me that leadership isn't about control. It's about respect, understanding, and giving those who follow you the chance to grow." Alice's heart swelled with pride, not for the praise, but for the realization that their bond had grown deeper than she ever imagined. It wasn't just about the pack anymore. It was about them, working together, understanding each other in ways they hadn't before. The journey had been long, but they were finally in a place where their differences didn't define them. "We have a long way to go," Alice said, her voice steady and sure. "But we will get there. Together." Dorian nodded, a quiet agreement passing between them. It was true. They had built a strong foundation, but the future was still uncertain. There would always be challenges, obstacles, and opposition. But now, they had something stronger than just power. They had each other, and they had the respect of the pack. As the days turned into weeks, the pack's transformation became undeniable. They weren't just following Alice because she was Dorian's mate anymore. They followed her because she had earned their trust. She had proven that she was a leader, not just by her strength, but by her heart. The Omega who had once been discarded was now the heart of the pack, and everyone knew it. One evening, as the pack gathered for a ceremony to honor their new unity, Alice stood beside Dorian at the front, her presence commanding attention without effort. The pack, once divided by old traditions, now stood together, united under a new understanding of strength and leadership. As Dorian began the ceremony, he looked at Alice, his eyes full of pride and respect. Tonight, we celebrate not just the unity of our pack, but the strength of the woman who has led us here, he said, his voice carrying across the gathered wolves. Alice has proven that true power comes from within, and it is that power that will guide us into the future. The pack erupted into cheers, their voices echoing in the night air. Alice's heart swelled, but this time, it wasn't just the satisfaction of being recognized. It was the knowledge that she had found her place, not just in the pack, but in the world. She wasn't just an Omega anymore. She was a leader, and she had earned that title through every step of her journey. As the ceremony continued, Alice stood tall, her eyes shining with the knowledge that she had finally found her place. It wasn't about the Alpha King or the pack's approval. It was about who she had become and the power she had claimed for herself. The night was filled with celebration, but in Alice's heart, there was a quiet peace. She had found her strength, and with it, she had changed the fate of the pack forever. The days following the ceremony were filled with a new energy, a sense of unity that had never been present before. The pack moved as one, no longer divided by the old structures of power, but united in their respect for Alice's leadership. Dorian, once the center of attention, had stepped back, allowing Alice to take the reins, and though it was a difficult adjustment, it was one he made willingly, his pride in her evident in everything he did. As the Alpha King and his mate, they worked together, not just as a couple, but as partners in leading the pack toward a new era. The changes in the pack were noticeable. There was less tension, more cooperation, and a growing sense of equality among the wolves. Alice's influence could be seen in every decision that was made, from how the wolves trained to how they shared resources. She had proven that leadership was about more than power. It was about vision, compassion, and trust. One evening, as Alice sat in the center of the pack's gathering space, she reflected on how far they had come. The weight of the past, the rejection, the humiliation, the isolation, felt distant now. It was as if she had shed an old skin, and the person she had become was stronger, more capable, and more confident. Dorian sat beside her, his presence a steadying force, though now, his eyes were full of respect for the woman beside him. "You've done it," he said quietly, his voice filled with a quiet pride. "You've not only changed the pack, but changed me." Alice smiled at him, the warmth in her eyes matching the calm strength she felt within herself. "We've done it, Dorian," she replied. "We both have, and this is just the beginning." Their partnership had grown beyond what either of them had expected. It was no longer about dominance or submission. It was about mutual respect, about building something together stronger than either of them could have achieved alone. And that was the foundation upon which the future of the pack would be built. As the nights grew colder and the seasons changed, Alice and Dorian continued to lead the pack with a new sense of purpose. They worked together to build new alliances with neighboring packs, ensuring that their future was secure. The pack had come to trust Alice completely, and as time passed, they saw her not as the Omega they once mocked, but as the heart of their community, the one who had brought them all together. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Alice stood at the edge of the forest, looking out at the land she now called her own. The air was crisp, and the scent of pine and earth filled her lungs. It felt right, this place, this life she had built. Dorian stood beside her, his presence comforting and strong. "You know, I never thought it would come to this," he said softly, his eyes watching the pack as they moved about the clearing. "I never thought you would be the one to lead us." Alice turned to him, her gaze steady and filled with a quiet understanding. "Neither did I," she said. "But sometimes, it takes being pushed to the edge to realize your true strength." Dorian nodded, a small smile on his lips. "I was wrong about you, Alice. I see that now." Alice smiled in return, not in triumph, but in peace. "And I was wrong about myself," she replied. Together, they stood in silence, watching as the pack continued to thrive under their leadership. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. The future was uncertain, as it always is, but for the first time in Alice's life, she felt ready for whatever it would bring. She had found her strength, her voice, and her place among the wolves. And with Dorian by her side, she knew they could face anything that came their way. The pack had been changed forever, and so had she. But this was just the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter they would write together. As the weeks passed, Alice's transformation continued to resonate through the pack. Her leadership was becoming stronger, her influence undeniable. With Dorian by her side, they faced the challenges ahead together, pushing the boundaries of what their pack could achieve. Their bond was no longer defined by mere duty or convenience. It was built on mutual respect, shared goals, and an unspoken understanding of each other's strengths. Together, they had turned the tide. Alice stood at the center of the pack's gathering once more, this time with confidence, pride, and purpose. The pack had gathered to discuss matters of great importance, and it was clear that this meeting would be different from the others. No longer were the whispers of doubt and resistance present. Instead, there was a palpable sense of unity. The pack had come to respect her, to see her not as the Omega who once cowered in the shadows, but as the leader who had united them all. Dorian stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, a gesture that spoke volumes of the trust and support he had for her. "The time has come for us to take the next step," Alice said, her voice steady and commanding as she addressed the pack. "We've built something stronger than just a pack. We've built a community, one where every wolf, no matter their rank, has a voice, has a purpose." Her words resonated with the wolves in the clearing. They had seen her rise from the depths of rejection to become the heart of their pack, the driving force behind their unity. Alice had shown them that strength came not from dominance or cruelty, but from understanding, from empowerment, and from lifting each other up. "We are no longer divided," Alice continued. "Our old ways of thinking, of separating ourselves by rank and power, no longer serve us. We will be stronger together, and we will show the world that we are more than just a pack of wolves. We are a family, and we will stand together as equals." A murmur of agreement passed through the pack, and Alice could see the change in their eyes. There was no longer any doubt about her leadership, no longer any hesitation. They had witnessed her journey, her rise from rejection to strength, and they knew that she was the one to lead them forward. As she finished speaking, Dorian stepped forward, his gaze meeting hers with deep admiration. "Alice has shown us what true strength is," he said, his voice clear and strong. "I stand beside her, not just as her mate, but as her equal. Together, we will lead this pack into a future where all wolves are valued, where strength is not defined by rank, but by our unity." The pack cheered, their voices rising in support. Alice felt the weight of their approval, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the responsibility they had entrusted to her. It was a responsibility she embraced wholeheartedly. The ceremony that followed was one of unity, a public acknowledgement of the bond that now defined their pack. Alice and Dorian stood side by side, their hands clasped together, as the pack pledged their loyalty, not just to Dorian as Alpha, but to Alice as their Luna. This was no longer about one person holding power. It was about the pack as a whole, united under the leadership of two strong wolves who had come together to create something far greater than themselves. As the night fell, the wolves of the pack danced around the fire, celebrating not just their unity, but the future they had built together. Alice stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as the pack reveled in the freedom they had fought so hard for. She had come a long way from the timid Omega who had once been afraid to stand in the light. Now, she was the leader they had all come to trust, the heart of their pack. And as Dorian joined her, his presence beside her a steady reminder of their shared journey, she knew that they were ready for whatever the future held. The path ahead would not always be easy. There would be challenges, both from within and from outside their territory. But Alice was no longer afraid. She had found her place in this world, and with Dorian by her side, she knew they would face whatever came their way, together. The pack had been united, and now, they were stronger than ever. The future was theirs to shape, and they would shape it as one. As the days turned into weeks, the unity within the pack grew stronger, and Alice's role as their leader became undeniable. With each passing day, The wolves began to embrace the changes she had instilled, a new sense of equality taking root in their hearts. No longer were they bound by the old ways of power and dominance. Instead, they began to see the true strength in cooperation, respect, and trust. Alice and Dorian worked side by side, leading with a shared vision of a future where every wolf had a voice, and every wolf was valued. Their bond, once fragile and uncertain, had now become the foundation of their leadership. As they trained together, hunted together, and made decisions together, the pack followed them not out of fear, but out of a deep respect for their strength as a united force. The challenges that had once seemed insurmountable now felt like distant memories, and every wolf in the pack understood that their unity was the key to their survival. But despite the progress, there were still obstacles that loomed on the horizon. As winter approached, a new threat emerged from the neighboring packs, seeking to test the strength of the unity Alice and Dorian had worked so hard to build. Whispers of an impending challenge reached Alice's ears one cold evening as the pack gathered by the fire. The wolves spoke of a rival alpha, one known for his ruthlessness and desire for power, who had been gathering followers in secret, eager to undermine Alice's leadership and claim the territory for himself. Alice could sense the unease in the pack as they discussed the situation, and she knew that this would be the test of everything they had worked for. "We've fought for this unity," Alice said, her voice calm but filled with an unwavering determination, "and we will not let anyone tear it down. We will stand together, as one pack, and face whatever comes our way." Dorian, ever the supportive mate, stood beside her, his expression resolute. "Alice is right. We are stronger than they think, and we will prove it." As the days passed, preparations were made for the inevitable confrontation. The pack trained harder, their movements more synchronized than ever before, as Alice led them in strategy meetings, her mind sharp and focused on the challenge ahead. Dorian stood by her side, offering both strength and counsel, his belief in her unwavering. The time for words had passed. It was now time to show the world that they were no longer the pack that had once been dismissed. They were a force to be reckoned with. The day of the challenge arrived, and the pack stood ready, their eyes filled with determination and courage. The rival alpha, a tall, imposing figure, arrived with his followers, his gaze cold and calculating. His pack, though formidable, lacked the unity that Alice had forged. As he stood before them, his voice echoed through the clearing. "I have come to claim what is rightfully mine," he declared, his eyes locking with Alice's. "This land, this pack, they belong to me now." Alice stepped forward, her posture strong and commanding. "This land belongs to us," she said, her voice steady and clear, "and we will not yield to anyone who tries to take it from us." The rival alpha sneered, his eyes filled with arrogance. "We'll see about that," he growled, signaling his pack to advance. The tension in the air was thick, and for a moment, everything seemed to stand still. Then, with a roar, the battle began. Alice fought with all the strength she had within her, her movements swift and calculated as she led her pack into battle. Dorian fought by her side, their bond evident in every move they made. The battle was fierce, but the pack fought with the strength of a family, their unity their greatest weapon. Alice's leadership, her ability to inspire those around her, was the driving force behind their victory. With each passing minute, it became clear that the rival alpha's pack was no match for the unity Alice had forged. The rival alpha, realizing he had underestimated them, finally retreated, his followers fleeing with him in defeat. Alice stood tall, her chest heaving from the exertion of battle, but her heart was filled with pride. They had won, not just the battle, but the future of their pack. As the dust settled, Dorian approached her, his eyes full of admiration. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with pride. "We did it," she replied, her voice steady and strong. The pack gathered around them, their cheers echoing through the clearing. They had not only defeated a powerful foe, they had proven that their unity was unbreakable, that together they could face anything. And in that moment, Alice knew that the path they had chosen was the right one. She had found her strength, and so had her pack. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, for they were no longer just a pack. They were a family, bound by loyalty, strength, and the unwavering belief that together they could overcome anything. With the defeat of the rival Alpha, the pack's future was secure, and the shift in their culture was more apparent than ever. The wolves no longer feared change. They embraced it, and their bond with Alice as their leader grew deeper every day. She had proven herself not only as a fighter, but as the heart of the pack, a beacon of strength that inspired those around her. The pack's transformation was complete. The old divisions that had once separated them, Alpha from Omega, strong from weak, had crumbled under the weight of Alice's leadership. They now stood together as equals, bound not by rank, but by loyalty and mutual respect. Their unity was their greatest weapon, and they had learned that power was not about domination, but about standing together. As time passed, Alice and Dorian continued to lead the pack into a new era. Their partnership had become a symbol of what true leadership looked like, a balance of strength and compassion, a blending of power and understanding. They had created something neither of them had ever imagined, a family, not defined by the old ways, but by the strength they shared. The pack flourished under their rule. The wolves were more than just a collection of individuals. They were a true family, with each member contributing to the collective strength of the whole. The pack hunted together, celebrated together, and faced challenges together, knowing that they were stronger as one. And through it all, Alice and Dorian's bond only deepened. They were not just leaders, they were partners, their connection inseparable, their love for each other and the pack unwavering. One evening, as they stood together at the edge of the forest, looking out over the land they had fought so hard to protect, Alice felt a deep sense of peace settle within her. The path that had led her here had not been easy, but it had shaped her into the leader she was today. "We did it," Alice said quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yes," Dorian replied, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "Together, we did." The pack's future was bright, and Alice knew that they had not only overcome the obstacles of the past, but had created a new legacy, one built on unity, respect, and love. They had proven that no matter the odds, no matter the challenges they faced, they were stronger together. As the moon rose high in the sky, casting its silver light over the pack, Alice and Dorian stood side by side, their hands clasped together. The journey had been long, but it had led them here, to this moment of peace and unity. And in that moment, Alice knew that their journey was far from over. There would always be challenges, always be threats, but as long as they stood together, nothing could break the bond they had forged. They had found their strength, and together, they would continue to lead the pack into a future where every wolf, regardless of their rank, could thrive. The future was theirs to shape, and they would shape it with the strength of their unity, their love, and the belief that together, they were unstoppable. In this captivating werewolf story, Alice rises from being a rejected Omega to the leader of her pack, proving that true strength lies in unity and respect. As she faces challenges from rival packs and battles internal divisions, Alice's journey highlights the power of transformation within a werewolf community. With the support of her mate, Dorian, she leads the pack into a new era, where strength is not defined by rank, but by the bond they share. This tale of love, leadership, and werewolf destiny shows how even the most unlikely individuals can shape their future. As Alice overcomes humiliation and proves her worth, the werewolf pack learns that power is not about dominance, but about standing together. With her strength and wisdom, Alice leads her pack to victory, showing them the true meaning of loyalty and unity in the werewolf world. Follow her story to see how one woman's courage can change the fate of an entire pack in this thrilling werewolf adventure.